Okay, a lot of new faces in. For those that don't know me, I'm James, also known as Cynical Developer, for very obvious reasons. We're all pretty jaded. And this is my talk, Good Enough is Good Enough. One of my many mantras that I've got, that I spout up and try to use to sound like I know what I'm talking about. A lot of people hear me say this and misconstrue it, they get it wrong. They don't understand what I mean by good enough is good enough. And this is sort of where this talk comes from on this mantra. And this is not about cutting corners. It's not about delivering crap software. It's not about doing the minimum amount you can get away with doing in a day and silently quitting. It's about doing what truly matters, and that's solving problems for your client, whether your client is your boss or whether it is an actual client that works with your company. And this all starts with the fact that we are all culpable of this, and it's fallen into the trap of perfectionism, over engineering stuff, adding complex layers that add no real value to the end product. How many people here have gone, well, we need to make it so the data layer in our application can be taken out, so we're on Microsoft SQL now, but we might want to go to Oracle or Postgres. I've done this job for 20 something years. I've done it once where I've had to actually change the data layer out. And for the most part, these applications don't need it, so don't bother, because all it does is lead to the delays, overruns, and an impact on ROI for your customer. And it might shock people is that perfection is actually an unnecessary cost. So that perfection is that you are looking to do the best job that you can do by doing everything that everybody tells you should be doing, but really they're not doing themselves. There are times where this is not something to follow. If you're writing software for life support machines or anything like that, be perfectionists. Don't just cut corners and do what just exactly what's needed. We've got to look into what the client needs. And this is very, very different to what they tell you they want. They are two very different things. They don't actually pay you for writing code. They're bringing you in as a software developer or a tester or whatever, but they're not. That's not your job. Your job is to find solutions, simple software solutions that meet the requirements that are most valuable to the customer. Forget about best practice, forget about cool tech and doing it the best way that you can do it. Don't bother. Do what is needed. Do what is quickest to get a return for your customer. And this is sort of where we come on to practicality over perfectionism. Say a company comes to you and they want an e-commerce website. They're a small company. They don't want you to write eBay. They don't want you to make Amazon. So they're not going to want a bespoke piece of software. It's going to take you months or years to build. They want something really quickly. And I have a lot of clients come to me who want this sort of thing, and I go use Wix, go use eBay, go use TikTok Store or whatever you want to use. Let's get some money flowing into your business through that e-commerce thing. A lot of these platforms now come with extensibility frameworks, so you can build on top of it if there is anything you need. And I've worked with a client that's actually used Wix in the back end to process all their payments, but they've got a bespoke website on the front of it, but it's still using Wix. And this comes down to only writing the code that you have to write. There was a time in my career where I was like, oh, I'm better than everyone else. I can write a better e-commerce platform. And I've written e-commerce platforms for people. But now there's so many good platforms out there that are written by tens or hundreds of developers that are much better than any of you in this room. And that's not to degrade any of you as who you are or what you are. But there are better people out there that are going to be doing this. And because that's all they do. That's their thing. And adopting these sort of systems makes your job easier. There's less real code you've got to write, and you can pivot and change really quickly. It could be that they go off and they use that Wix system for 6-12 months while you build them the bespoke system they need, and they've got return on investment within a couple of days. They've started selling their product. 6 months later, they go, oh, look, now you can go and buy add-ons for your product as well, and all, other different things. And all you're doing is building those little bits of functionality. Code or not to code, that is the question. Sometimes the best option is to write no code at all. Don't open an IDE, don't do any coding, don't do any Googling, nothing. And an example of that is that I worked for a major airport in the local vicinity. Don't want to name any names, but rhymes with Sanchester. I had the head of their call centre come to me and the team that I was working with, and they had a bug in the system that we'd written for them, and they wanted us to fix it. And I looked into the bug, and it had taken the 4 developers that were on the team a couple of weeks to fix it. They had a workaround for this bug that had no real business impact. It was just something they did. So I did a cost analysis on it, and I found out it was cheaper for them to pay the person in the call centre for 2 years to do that workaround than it was to have the 4 of us fix it in a couple of weeks. And the fact of the matter was that within 2 years that system was being rewritten anyway, so why bother fixing it? So I took that to them, and rather than just going, I'm not going to fix it, I gave them evidence of why I was not going to fix it. And there is your reason for not doing it, and it's good enough that we're not going to fix it. So, balancing quality doesn't mean mediocre work. It means understanding the problem and understanding the point of diminishing returns. I don't mean to offend anybody, but there's only so much polishing you can do on a turd. Just be happy with what's there. Does it do what's needed? Get it out the door. Build software that is, yes, robust. Make sure it's maintainable, but only really if it needs to be maintainable. Is this a flash in the pan that's going to be used for a couple of months and that's it? Just get it all done. If you write in, I don't know, an Azure function, and it's just a quick thing that's never going to be looked at again, stick it all in the function, get it out the door, get that return on investment as quick as you can. If it's something that's going to be there long term, it's a part of a bigger system, yeah, put the effort in, break it down properly, make sure that it's maintainable, make sure that you're writing simple code, because nobody really cares about your fancy design patterns. They don't care how much of a coding superhero you are, or you think you are, or how many points you've got on Stack Overflow. What they care about is how much money they are making in their business, and you are there as an ends to a means. So it doesn't mean do a crappy job, do a good job, make sure that others can pick up after you if they need to. But again, do what's needed, don't go over and above. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is that if you're spending 3 months on a project and you're building this fantastic piece of functionality that the project really could do with, but the customer doesn't need it and didn't ask for it, why bother? We've all done that because it's a cool feature and you think, this would be great. So just remember that good enough is good enough, and it's not about doing the minimum, it's about doing the opposite of that. And this will actually set you above everybody else that is vying for that perfectionism, because you'll be known as the person that gets the product out the door. So this mantra is essentially, in essence, about delivering value efficiently. So focus on the practical solutions, prioritize direct impact, forget about code that's your baby or a bit of CV driven development, and embrace the mantra. Avoid over-engineering and deliver software that serves a purpose. Remember that good enough is good enough. Thank you.
Got 30 seconds.
Any questions? Any question for James?
I guess, so have you ever been with a client and you've said, we're not going to do this because of this, and then they kick back the other way and say, you know what I mean, even despite your advice, they like, I'd rather spend the money?
Yeah.
Who
was it?
Well,
yeah. Well, you've already got enough of those clients. We were discussing this earlier. Yeah, I think that there's a point where if the client insists that it gets fixed or build that feature, then do it. But your time's valuable. Why waste your time doing stuff that's not really needed? Put it to the client that, look, it's not going to give you any benefit. It's not going to be better for you. We've all been in those meetings where they go, can that text be read? Can we move it left a little bit? Look, we're behind on the deadline. Let's try and get this out. And trying to coach the client into understanding what is best for their end product is the secret there. I did recently have an interview where I used this mantra and I said good enough is good enough, and the two guys that were interviewing me were dumbstruck by it. They were like, well, what do you mean good enough is good? You're not going to do the best you can do. It's like, no, that's not what this means. And that's kind of where this came from. And then I explained to them what it meant, and they were like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, people do take offence to it. But
so
I'm a bit like that anyway.
How do you make sure you're aware? You know, I guess I'm thinking of like domain-driven design, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to a point where you feel confident enough that you understand their business almost better than they do, that you can say you don't need that?
It's sitting down and looking at the problem that they're trying to address, and it comes, I think, with experience. So I had another client that brought me in for a specific job. They said, this is what we need, and it's got to be on the blockchain, and it's got to do this, and it's got to do that. And I was like, okay, great. So if you want it on blockchain, who are the other people that are going to validate this data to make sure your ledger is legitimate? Oh no, we won't be doing that. Right, well, we could store it in the same fashion, but that's not really what you need. And you break it. What I ended up doing is breaking down and speaking to the different people, different like investment, what's it called, shareholder type stakeholders. That's the word I'm looking for. Speak to all of them, find out exactly what they all expect from the system, as well as what the owner of the business has this vision for, and then present them with, this is what I think you do. And like, I was replacing manual process. So what I did is I mapped out that manual process of what they were doing, and this was a domain-driven design project, and then showed them, here's your manual process, and here it is in code, and this is what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do, what you tell me you want, is just buzzword bingo. It's not going to provide you any benefit. It's just going to cost you more to host it. So you're educating the client as much as you can as well. And I think depending on where you are in your career, that is a hard thing to do. If you're a junior going in and going, oh, I'm not going to do this work, that's not going to fly. But it's something that maybe you should hold close to your chest when you're working on something. Anything else?
Who did Lippy Mouse?
Oh, you have to find out, won't you?
It wasn't me.
No. To be fair, I put that in as just one of those funny things because I'm a funny guy. And I gave it to ChatGPT and I said, can you write me a lightning talk on this? And it's actually written a really good one. And it brings that into it as well.
You tease.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.